It's 8:30 in the morning and the highway is frozen. Cars are stacked bumper to bumper as far as the eye can see. Red brake lights glow like a warning sign stretched across the city. Drivers stare at the clock, calculating how late they're going to be today. Now cut to a different city. It's also rush hour, but the street is calm. Cars move slowly, steadily. Cyclists pass through without fear. Pedestrians cross without sprinting. There are no massive overpasses, no shiny new highways, no visible upgrades at all. Yet, traffic works. So why does one city drown in congestion while another quietly fixes it without building anything new? For most of modern history, cities believed traffic was a simple math problem. Too many cars plus too little space equals congestion. So the fix was obvious. Add space, widen the road, add another lane, build a flyover, dig a tunnel, and repeat as needed. Politicians loved this approach because it looked decisive. Engineers liked it because it was measurable. Drivers supported it because it promised relief, and for a short while, it worked. When a new lane opens, traffic suddenly feels lighter, cars move faster, commute times drop, newspapers run headlines celebrating the project. Everyone agrees the problem has been solved. But then something strange happens. Week by week, that empty space begins to disappear. The lanes slowly fill, traffic returns. Soon, the road feels just as congested as it did before, sometimes worse. Cities kept seeing this pattern, but for decades, no one wanted to admit what it meant. Because it meant the problem wasn't capacity, it was behavior. This phenomenon has a name, induced demand, but you don't need jargon to understand it. Imagine there's a road you avoid because it's always jammed. When it gets expanded and suddenly flows smoothly, you start using it again. Other people do the same. Some drivers who use public transport think driving looks faster now. Developers push housing farther away because commuting feels easier. Each individual decision makes sense, but together, they flood the road with new traffic. The road didn't fail, it succeeded at exactly what it encouraged: more driving. This is why traffic behaves differently than almost everything else we build. When you make driving easier, you don't just serve existing demand, you create new demand. Cities that widen roads aren't fighting congestion, they're feeding it. Nowhere is this clearer than in places that went all in on highway expansion. In North America, some highways were widened again and again, each time promising permanent relief. In some cases, they became the widest roads on Earth, and yet congestion increased and commute times expanded. The lesson was uncomfortable but undeniable. You can't build your way out of traffic, because traffic isn't a physical thing. It's a living system shaped by human choices. And when cities design for cars, they get more cars. That's the paradox. The more you accommodate driving, the more driving you create. The more lanes you add, the faster they fill. The harder you chase relief, the further it moves away. So if adding space makes things worse, what happens when you stop adding space altogether? That's where the genius solutions begin. Some cities made a radical decision. Instead of asking how to move cars faster, they asked how to make traffic calmer, simpler, and more predictable. They didn't build, but they adjusted, and those adjustments worked better than anyone expected. Let's start with something almost invisible: traffic lights. In many cities, congestion isn't caused by too many cars, but by cars being forced to stop unnecessarily. Lights change at the wrong time, intersections block each other. One red light creates a wave of braking that ripples through the entire network. Some cities discovered that by simply retiming existing signals without adding a single new one, traffic began to flow more smoothly. Cars stopped less often, speeds stabilized, and intersections cleared faster. Drivers didn't feel like they were going faster, they just stopped feeling stuck. Then there's the intersection itself. Most people are used to traffic lights, but lights are actually incredibly inefficient. They force every direction to stop completely, even when there's no conflict. They create long queues and sudden acceleration, which wastes time and fuel. Roundabouts flip that logic. Instead of stopping everyone, they slow everyone just enough. Cars yield instead of halt. Movement becomes continuous instead of binary, stop or go. What looks chaotic at first actually reduces conflict. Serious crashes drop dramatically, traffic flows more evenly, and in many cases, roundabouts move more vehicles per hour than traditional intersections using the same amount of space. But the most counterintuitive change cities made was narrowing their roads. At first, this sounds insane. Why would you make roads smaller when traffic is already bad? Because wide roads tell drivers something without saying a word. They say, "You're safe to go fast." Narrow roads say the opposite. When lanes are narrower, drivers slow down naturally because their brain tells them to be cautious. This has a powerful effect. Slower speeds reduce sudden braking. Fewer crashes means fewer blockages. Traffic becomes smoother and more consistent. Here's the key insight: speed is not the same as flow. A road where cars move steadily at moderate speeds often moves more people than a road where cars alternate between racing and stopping completely. The smartest cities stopped designing roads like racetracks and started designing them like conversations between humans. They used curves instead of straightaways, trees instead of guardrails, raised crossings instead of warning signs. The street itself began to explain how it should be used. Drivers paid attention, pedestrians felt safer, cyclists stopped being an afterthought, and without building anything new, traffic improved by reducing conflict. Up to this point, everything we have seen has been physical: roads, lights, intersections, concrete solutions to what appears to be a concrete problem. But the most powerful tools cities use to eliminate traffic don't involve concrete at all. They involve psychology. Every driver on the road is making thousands of micro decisions every minute: when to accelerate, when to brake, whether to squeeze through a gap, whether to yield or assert dominance. And those decisions aren't shaped by laws alone, they're shaped by perception. For decades, cities believed safety and efficiency came from control: more signs, more rules, more paint, more instructions telling people exactly what to do. But that belief produced an unintended side effect. It made drivers stop thinking. When a street is overloaded with signals, drivers outsource responsibility. They trust the system to manage risk for them. Green light? Go. Red light? Stop. Lane markings? Follow them blindly. This creates a false sense of security. Drivers feel protected, so they drive faster. They glance at their phones. They stop scanning for pedestrians or cyclists because they assume the system has already separated danger from safety. Ironically, this makes streets more dangerous and more congested. Then came a radical idea that felt almost reckless. What if we removed the safety nets? What if instead of telling drivers they're safe, we reminded them they're not? This was the thinking behind shared space. In shared space environments, many of the traditional tools of traffic control disappear. No traffic lights, no painted lanes, no rigid separation between cars and people. At first glance, it looks like chaos waiting to happen, but the opposite occurs. Uncertainty forces attention. When drivers don't know exactly who has the right of way, they slow down. They make eye contact. They read body language. They negotiate movement in real time. The street becomes a conversation instead of a command system. This idea unsettled traffic engineers because it violated a core assumption that safety comes from strict control, but the data told a different story. In places where shared space was implemented correctly, crash severity dropped, speeds fell, and traffic smoothed out because they were engaged. The mind, when alert, behaves better than when automated. One of the most powerful demonstrations of this came from small towns that removed traffic lights at dangerous intersections. Instead of adding barriers and signs, they removed them. People expected disaster. What they got was calm. Without signals telling them when to go, drivers approached cautiously. They slowed earlier. They yielded naturally. Pedestrians crossed confidently because they were seen, not ignored. The intersection stopped being a machine and started being a social space. This reveals something profound. Humans are remarkably good at negotiating shared environments, when they are allowed to. Traffic problems often arise not because people are bad drivers, but because systems encourage bad driving. Another psychological shift cities used was reframing who the street belongs to. For most of the 20th century, streets were treated as vehicle corridors. Their primary purpose was movement. Human presence was secondary. Some cities reversed that narrative. They didn't ban cars. They didn't demonize drivers. They simply redesigned streets so that human activity was visible and dominant. Outdoor seating crept closer to the roadway. Trees narrowed sightlines. Pavement textures changed under tires. Curbs softened or disappeared. Suddenly, drivers weren't passing through an abstract transport system. They were entering a place where people lived, and that changed behavior instantly. No sign can replicate the effect of seeing a child playing near the street, or someone sitting at a cafe table inches from where you're driving. Drivers slow down not because they're told to, but because it feels wrong not to. This is the power of environmental cues. They bypass logic and speak directly to instinct. Cities also discovered something surprising about stress. Congestion isn't just about time lost, it's about emotional load. Stop-and-go traffic spikes stress hormones. Constant braking and accelerating exhausts attention. Competing with other drivers creates aggression. Highly controlled streets full of rules and signals amplify this stress by turning driving into a constant performance test. Miss a light and you're punished with delay. Misjudge a gap and you're honked at. Calmer streets remove that pressure. When movement is slower but predictable, stress drops. Drivers stop racing the system. They accept the pace. And when stress drops, traffic improves. Because stressed drivers make bad decisions, calm drivers don't. This is why cities that slowed traffic often saw congestion improve rather than worsen. They weren't slowing cars, they were stabilizing human behavior. All of this sounds elegant in theory, but theories don't move cities. Proof does. And the proof comes from places that tried these ideas when failure was a real possibility. Let's return to London. Before congestion pricing, central London traffic had reached a breaking point. Average speeds were barely faster than walking. Buses were unreliable. Air quality was deteriorating. There was no room for new roads. The city was already dense. The only lever left was demand, so London did something politically risky. It put a price on congestion to communicate value. The change forced people to ask a simple question before driving. Is this trip worth it? For many, the answer was no. Traffic volumes dropped almost immediately. Buses moved faster, emergency response times improved, cycling increased, walking surged, and crucially, the city didn't grind to a halt. Life went on, just with fewer cars. The charge didn't eliminate driving, it filtered it. Only the trips that truly needed to happen stayed. Everything else adapted. Stockholm followed a similar path. When the city proposed congestion pricing, public opposition was fierce. People feared chaos. They predicted economic collapse, so the city ran a trial. Just a few months. The results were undeniable. Traffic fell, travel times improved, pollution dropped, and public transport worked better. When the trial ended, congestion returned almost instantly. That contrast changed public opinion. Stockholm voted to keep the system. Sometimes seeing the alternative is enough. Now consider Copenhagen. Copenhagen didn't eliminate traffic with a single bold policy. It did it slowly, deliberately, over decades. Every time a street was rebuilt, small decisions were made. Sidewalks widened slightly, bike lanes became safer, public spaces expanded. Nothing dramatic, nothing revolutionary, but those changes accumulated. Driving didn't become impossible, it just stopped being the easiest option for short trips. Today, a majority of trips in Copenhagen are made by bicycle or on foot because alternatives are simply better. Traffic disappeared not through restriction, but through competition. Then there's Tokyo. Tokyo is one of the largest cities on Earth, yet it doesn't suffer from constant gridlock like many car-centric cities. One reason is its strict approach to parking. In Tokyo, you can't buy a car unless you prove you have a place to park it. This single rule changes everything. Car ownership becomes intentional. Streets aren't clogged with parked vehicles. Driving is a choice, not an assumption. Public transport thrives, walking feels normal, and congestion stays manageable despite enormous density. Tokyo didn't wage war on cars, it just refused to subsidize their convenience. And then we return to the Netherlands, where the Woonerf represents the ultimate expression of psychological street design. In these cities, the street stops being a road and becomes a shared living space. Children play where cars drive, adults walk freely, vehicles move slowly and respectfully. The design doesn't rely on enforcement, it relies on social norms. Drivers understand immediately, this space isn't mine. That understanding does more than any speed limit sign ever could. But of course, not every experiment worked perfectly. Some shared spaces confused tourists. Some congestion charges hit lower-income drivers harder without proper alternatives. Some pedestrian zones struggled when access wasn't planned carefully. The successful cities learned from these mistakes. They paired restrictions with options, pricing with investment, and design changes with public communication. They treated traffic as a system, not a problem to be smashed. So what's the real trick? It isn't tricking drivers, it's understanding them. Cities that eliminated traffic didn't fight human nature, they designed for it, accepting that people respond to incentives, environments, and emotions. Then they stopped asking how to move cars faster. They started asking how to make movement better, and in doing so, they uncovered a truth that still feels radical.